So this is very interesting news. The Xbox 360 store will shut down in July of next year, 2024. But you can keep playing your games on the Xbox 360 if you already purchased them. That includes online multiplayer. They're not going to cut off online multiplayer from the 360 in 2024. They're not going to prevent you from playing the games you already purchased on Xbox 360. But you can no longer purchase games or DLC on the Xbox 360 starting next year. Now, as much as this sucks, I am going to be fair and balanced because, look, I'm someone that is very critical of Microsoft, more critical than most people. I would say that the general discourse in the video game community is way too much on the pro-Microsoft side. There are just way too many Xbox apologists, Phil Spencer bootlickers. Like, it's just ridiculous. I think there's way too much pro-Xbox sentiment online that is, in my opinion, not deserved at all. And I was one of the few people that actually criticized the acquisition of Activision Blizzard, saying that it's not good for the video game industry and for the players. You can go back years of me making anti-Xbox or just videos that are critical of Phil Spencer and Microsoft and Xbox when most people were not. I'm also one of the few people that says that Game Pass is a terrible service and will be the downfall of video games as we know it. So I'm saying this because I know I'm already going to get a whole bunch of comments from Sony fanboys because I'm going to kind of defend Microsoft or defend Xbox in this video, but I can already see the comments from all the Sony ponies saying, oh, you're just another Xbot, you defend everything Microsoft does. If you actually know me and my history, you know that that is not true. So I'm just going to start off by saying that. That being said, I think that there is a false equivalency being brought by a lot of Sony fanboys when they are saying, like this tweet on Twitter, or I'm sorry, X, fucking stupid. Will Xbox get any shit for doing this like Sony got when they try to shut down the PS3 store, or will Phil charm everyone again? I thought Xbox were super pro-consumer and would never do this because the store is the same store used on Xbox One and Series X. I think it just makes perfect business sense to do this, to shut down the 360 store and to just keep going with the Xbox One and Xbox Series X, because another thing is that if you have backwards compatible titles, so any game that you can buy right now that is Xbox 360 but it's backwards compatible on the One or the Series X, that is not going to be delisted from sale in 2024. All the games that are currently backwards compatible right now will remain playable and purchasable way past 2024. So that's another thing to point out. So all the old Call of Duty games, there's a whole bunch of games. I'm not going to list all of them, but you guys know the games that are backwards compatible. So that is not going to be affected at all by this shutdown. Now, as someone who says that while Microsoft has done great when it comes to video game preservation, at least a whole lot better than Sony and Nintendo have, there still is a lot of work to be done in the sense that there are so many games still that are from the 360 that you cannot play, that are not backwards compatible. Mostly sports titles and a whole bunch of games. A lot of them, to be fair, either are on PC or another platform. They've been remastered or whatever, or they are sports games. And obviously with the licensing, they can't keep those games up on the store. Usually like every 2 years or so, the game gets delisted. So for example, you have Madden 24 coming out. By 2026, Madden 24 will be delisted and no longer purchasable. So when it comes to sports games, I mean, that's honestly like a big chunk of the games that are still not backwards compatible, but that just goes with the territory. Like sports games and preservation, you know, that's always been a problem because of the licensing not lasting very long for these titles. It is worth pointing out that the vast majority of games that are still listed on the Xbox 360 store are part of the backwards compatibility program. There are very few games that are still listed on the 360 store, but can only be bought on the Xbox 360 and not on the Xbox One and Xbox Series X. There are some, they exist, but there aren't a whole lot of them. I'm not going to pretend that doesn't suck, especially if you're someone that just has an Xbox 360. Maybe you have a PS5, and you do have modern gaming platforms, but you do not have an Xbox Series console, and you don't want an Xbox Series console, and you're just good with the 360 because the 360 games are all you really care about. But I think we can be realistic here and say that it's a very, very small minority of people that are still buying games on the 360 and a lot of people that are still buying 360 games on the Xbox One and on the Xbox Series X. So business-wise, like, I think it makes complete sense, and it is almost justifiable to discontinue support for a 20-year-old console. It's 20 years old. Just about 18 years if you're going to be more specific, but in 2 years the 360 turns 20 years old. Like, you know, like it's completely unprecedented for a video game console. So if it ends next year, to have 19 years of support, that is a record. And like I said earlier in the video, there will still be support. You can play the games, you can connect to the internet, you can play online multiplayer beyond 2024 on the Xbox 360. This just affects game purchases. So, you know, you could be critical of Microsoft. I'm not obviously going to say that you have no right to be upset by this, especially if you're someone who is affected by this. But I think it's also worth saying and pointing out that it is a false equivalency. Like, trying to compare the shutdown of the Xbox 360 to that of the PS3, because the vast majority of the PS3's library is not preserved at all. Most PlayStation 3 exclusives, you think of the Infamous games, you think of some of the Ratchet and Clank games, and Killzone, Resistance, I can go on and on. There were a lot of PS3, the vast majority of them, with the exception of the Uncharted games and The Last of Us, are not preserved at all. They are not remastered, they are not re-released, they are not playable outside of, I think, PlayStation Now, the streaming shit, that is just complete garbage. Like, you're better off not playing the game at all than playing it that way. It was a few months ago that Nintendo shut down the Wii U store, and nobody really gave a shit. People are only talking about the 3DS because there are a lot of games, obviously, on the 3DS that were not re-released on the Switch, but pretty much the entire Wii U library was re-released on the Switch. So, them shutting down the storefront for the Wii U, no one really cared at all about. People did care about the 3DS, though, so, you know, that was bad. But I think what Microsoft's doing right now, and it's not just what I think it's just observable fact, that what Microsoft is doing here is nothing compared to if Sony were to shut down the PS3 store, because the level of game preservation is just, well, it's 0 on the PS3, or maybe like 5% of the PS3 games are playable on modern platforms, while not only are they playable on modern platforms for the Xbox, but the actual, if you purchased it on the 360, you can play it, and you will still be able to play it on the Xbox One and Xbox Series X. Meanwhile, the only way Sony would preserve a game is by re-releasing it and you having to pay for it again, basically. And they don't even do that. So I think Sony fanboys should remember that before they criticize Microsoft for this. Because you know it's inevitable, right? Because they got a lot of backlash about shutting down the PS3 store, but you know in the next year or 2, or 3 years maybe, whatever it's going to be, it's going to get shut down eventually. It's going to happen. And to be fair, though, I'm someone who doesn't want an Xbox Series console. I have an Xbox One. That's how I play most of my Xbox games, my 360 games that are either not playable on PC, or they just play a lot better on Xbox, like the old Call of Duty games. Nobody plays those games on PC, but they do play them on Xbox, so that's how I get those games going. But yeah, I'm happy with my Xbox One. I don't want an Xbox Series X, but it's probably going to happen one day, maybe like 5 years from now, that Microsoft's going to do exactly what they're doing now with the 360, but with the Xbox One, you know? So maybe then I'll be singing a different tune, but it's also realistic that in the next 5 years, my Xbox One's going to go to shit, and I'm probably going to have to be forced to upgrade anyway, so I don't know. Well, I know what you guys think about this news and how you guys feel about it. Do you think it's a big deal? Do you think that it's the same thing as Sony when they try to shut down the PS3 store? Because I think it's pretty obvious that it's not, and I think these people are just grasping at straws, you know, whenever they're trying to criticize Microsoft. And I'm someone who's very critical of Microsoft myself, but valid criticism is more important than just blind criticism, I think.